everybody on this brisk day. Winter, to put it mildly, right? Winter.
Well, it was better this morning because I walked this morning. It wasn't
Yeah.
as windy.
Yeah.
It's worse now.
Oh, it's worse now?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, no
Yeah,
wind
it's
to
going
them.
now.
Well, the flag's
You can see
going
with
a
the
little
flag,
bit.
you
Right?
can see the wind is shining. The wind is the worst time.
Yeah.
This morning it wasn't.
So, oh, there are new, there are the little flyers are
Yes.
over there.
Like,
Did everybody take one?
And for the upcoming books that we're going to be reading.
oh, did you say it wasn't there?
Yeah,
Oh,
on the
okay,
back.
perfect.
Right,
Okay.
okay, good. So I'm
Okay,
very,
we're gonna have one in January.
very pleased. Yes, in January.
Wow, it's not so far away.
Well, because that was the one we
No,
were
no, it's a
supposed to
good
have in
idea.
September.
Oh, you canceled, yeah.
And when I had to cancel, and so, so the Little Liar, which is Mitch Albom, which I've never done
Oh,
one of
okay.
his books before, but that one, had you read it? Had anybody read it for? Yeah, right. So that one I thought that was just so interesting because of the topic, because it's about the Jews of Salonika and
Thessaloniki.
Thessaloniki,
That's
right? Yeah. So that, and then anyway, you'll see. So then there's January, and then
There's
there's
got a lot. That's
May,
terrific.
June, July, anyway, all the way until next December,
My
which
gosh.
seems
No, it says December there.
December, yeah, a long, far away, but anyway, so, okay. So Frederik Backman, oh, should I be
Yes,
using the
please.
name? Yes, sorry,
That-
sorry. Okay,
There we go.
woo, sorry. Did you get to read it? Did anybody get to read it?
Yeah, I think we-
Oh, good, okay.
I did not.
You did not get to read it, but you've read some of his, do you remember Frederik Backman? All right, let me tell you a little bit about him. He's a very well-known, I don't know if we've done other books of his over the years. I don't know if we did A Man Called Ove.
Yes.
We did it?
Yeah, it takes place in the Scandinavian countries.
Right, yeah, he's a Swedish author, so his books are all set in.
And also they made a film.
Yes, I think they made 2 films out of it. In fact, I think they made one, like an original Swedish film, and then didn't they make one with Tom Hanks?
Yeah, like a Hollywood.
A Hollywood
Yeah.
version, right? And that was that A
That was
Man Called
very-
I think that
Otto?
was
Yeah.
a man called Ove with Tom Hanks.
Or he was Tom Hanks was oh.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks was Ove.
So there's
And
a
who was-
man called Otto and there's a man
Oh,
called
yeah.
Ove, not to be confused with one another. They're totally different books, I think.
Are they?
I thought
I never
so.
heard of him.
Really? And which one was Tom Hanks in?
A man called
Called
Ove.
Ove.
He was
Oh.
Ove.
And then there were the Otto and Edda. And
Oh yeah, with the
that's
4
the other
names.
one.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's different. But I don't know if I met. Okay, but you know what? I do remember seeing many years ago a man called well, I think I remember reading once that the correct pronunciation is like it should rhyme with Hoover, like Hoover. So anyway, A Man Called Ove, because I can't pretend to be Swedish. An original Swedish version, which was really Swedish, and then they made the Tom Hanks version. Anyway, he is a New York Times best-selling author, as says on the cover of this book. It's actually a very cool cover. If anybody saw it or has it, with the swimming and the picture, and so he's become very popular. He was born in 1981, so he's a relatively, to my mind, young man. He is Swedish, and he sets his books in Sweden. He's written a number of books. I was going to tell you, especially the titles of the books that you may be familiar with. His first book, so he originally started out, he was a columnist, a newspaper columnist. He also, now of course people keep blogs, but he was originally a newspaper columnist. And in 2012, he wrote A Man Called Ove, and it was translated, I think, a couple of years later. Then, at the same time, he published a small book called Things My Son Needs to Know About the World. And apparently, I don't know if this is true or just an anecdote, that he told his publisher that if they wanted his book, A Man Called Ove, they would also have to publish this little book, nonfiction, this is like his only nonfiction one, about things my son needs to know about the world, because that's when he had a child, and he decided that he wanted to write this little parenting book, although he calls it a dysfunctional parenting book. He's a very funny guy. I don't know if anybody listened to any like YouTube videos or interviews with him, because he's very witty, as funny as his books are, and he has this way of writing that's a combination of humor and sadness and seriousness, but always mixed with humor. And so when he speaks, he's like a stand-up comic. He's got perfect pitch timing, and he's really very funny. If you want to start with something, I recommend you find, you don't have to watch a long interview, but there's this 4.5-minute little clip where Simon & Schuster, his publisher, he asked him to speak, I guess it's some author meeting, and he talks and he says, I'm only here because my publisher told me that I have to come here. You know, well, first of all, good afternoon, my name is Frederik Backman with his Swedish accent. And he says, so I told my publisher I do not like to speak in public. I am very happy sitting in a room all day where I yell at these characters that I create. That's what I do. I do not like to speak to live people. I am not good with live people. But she said to me, you have to come and you have to do this. And it goes on, and it's really funny because it's about procrastination. Because he says, you know, when I'm asked if I ever do I suffer from something called writer's block? And he says, no, I do not suffer from writer's block because I have procrastination. And procrastination, then you don't have to suffer from any block of anything because I just don't do anything and I procrastinate. Anyway, it's really funny. So he's very witty and he's really funny to listen to, even though he says he doesn't like to speak. He also says he does not like to travel. So, which for an author nowadays, you know, you'd think that an author would just have to write. So he'd be very happy if all he had to do was sit in his room writing and talking to all the characters that he creates in his head. But as he says, unfortunately, that's not the way things are. Publishers push you, you have to go on author tours, and he can't stand traveling, and he doesn't like talking to people. So that's the hardest part, he says, about this. Anne Tyler, whose book we spoke about the other month, she is the same way. She famously, for many years, would not speak to journalists. She wouldn't give interviews, and it's only recently that I guess somehow she was pressed into service by her publisher. But authors but often just like to write, and they're solitary people, and that's what they would like to do. They do not want to be speaking. But he, although it's sort of fun, and it's funny because he really is so charming and so funny that when you listen to him, you think, okay, you know, you say you don't like to speak to people, but you really do a good job about it. And apparently Jerry Seinfeld was in the audience when he made this speech, and he laughed, and they asked Frederik Backman if if Jerry Seinfeld wanted to do a show with him, would he be interested? And he said, no. If he laughed at me once, that's the only laugh he's ever going to get, and don't want any more to do with it. So he is an author who started out his career as a columnist, as a newspaper columnist, and then started writing these novels. So A Man Called Ove became a big hit and was eventually translated because he writes in Swedish, although his English is excellent. And he says that that's very helpful because he can go over the English translations of his book with his editors when they're translating it, and he can try and make sure that the translation works, because it's really tricky, and the expressions in one language are not the expressions in another language, and the humor, is not necessarily the same. But Frederik Backman seems to enchant audiences in many languages, not the least North American and English-speaking audiences. Then his next book, published the year after, is called My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry. Has anybody read that one? No. So it's one of his earlier ones, and the main character is this 7-year-old girl, a little girl who feels very lonely and different and uncomfortable in the world, and her best friend is her grandmother. And then her grandmother dies, and her grandmother leaves her a list of people that she would like this little granddaughter to to apologize for, because the grandmother was quite a character and she offended many, many people during her life. So she leaves the granddaughter, among other things, she leaves her this list of who to go and to apologize for the things that the grandmother did and that the people who she offended. That book apparently, and I hadn't read that one, but that book one has a lot of fairy tales in it, and the little girl lives in a fairy tale world. Harry Potter is very much part of her imaginary life. And so there she has created a child, which Backman seems to do. In this case, he's writing about teenagers, mainly, but he creates characters who have trouble in the real world. And he says, yes, that comes from me. None of the characters in my novels really are based specifically on anybody, but they're composites. He said, you know, and authors say that. It takes 20, 30 people that they know in their real life and put them together, and a bit of this and a bit of that and another bit of from the third one, and then they create characters. So this little girl in My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, was bits and pieces of characters, but also maybe Backman when he was a little boy. The next book he wrote was called Brit Marie Was Here, which I can't remember if we did it. I read it also. Loneliness and not fitting in, and a woman who doesn't feel part of the community. I can't remember, obviously I can't remember 2014 whether we did that book or not. Anyway, then comes the Beartown trilogy. We did Beartown. I'm pretty sure we did Beartown. Yeah, we did Beartown.
Anxious people as well.
Oh, there was Anxious People, right. So he wrote Beartown in 2017. Then he wrote, Beartown became a trilogy. And then after that, the second volume was Us Against You. And the third volume of that was The Winners. But in between, there was Anxious People. Anxious People we did. Do you remember? It was about this group of people. There's an apartment for sale, and the real estate agent is showing the apartment, and then there is, it becomes kind of a murder mystery as well, and these different people who come, and they're all looking at the apartment. It's very clever. He wrote that in 2020, and then he wrote the third volume of the Beartown trilogy. So the Beartown trilogy became also very popular. I think they made, I don't know if it's Netflix, but there's a series that, or a film. Was it a series? Can you remember that? Yeah, you will look it up.
The internet will tell me.
The internet will tell you, yeah.
Miniseries.
I think a Swedish production. It's about this this youth hockey team in a small town in Sweden. It's not in Stockholm. The bad people are from Stockholm in that book. And it's about this hockey team and how it's, taken over the town, or how it's very important to the town.
Makes me think of Montreal.
Yeah.
Hockey is so important.
Hockey is so important. Yeah, particularly in that town. And but again, it's about the young people playing on the hockey team and their families, and you get such a good picture of Swedish society when you read Frederik Backman. His books are bestsellers in his home country of Sweden, and they've also been published in more than 25 different languages. So he's become, for somebody who's shy and who didn't want to be in the limelight and who's not interested in talking to people, he certainly has done very well for himself. He grew up not in Stockholm, in Helsingborg, Sweden, and has been writing for newspapers and a man's magazine for many years. His books have brought him, as I said, fame, and they spend a very long time on the New York Times bestseller lists. After the success of his first book, which was A Man Called Ove, then Simon & Schuster bought the rights to all his other novels and had them translated into English. They weren't all originally translated into English. He is married. He married a woman whose name is Neda Shafti. I think she's Iranian. He's been married since 2009, and he has 2 children. And in interviews, when I was looking for some interviews about this book, especially to do with how he wrote his teenage figures, his characters, he said, well, my children were able to help me with that, because it's been so many years since I was a teenager. And I thought, well, he's not exactly so old. He's born in 1981, which makes him, what, 44 44, 45 years old now, so, but he is the age of the older characters in this book. So those of you who read the book, you know that it goes back and forth. There's a present time story, and then there's the story that happened 25 years earlier. So he needed to get, he said, to get the teenagers who were teenagers 25 years ago, he said, I would know how to write them because I was a teenager 25 years ago. But the teenagers of today, like the character of Louisa, who is the main character, he said, that's hard for me because I don't know what a teenager sounds like authentically. He said, so his daughter, I think, is 12 now, and his son maybe a couple of years older. And he said, but I listened to them, and I asked them questions, and then I asked my wife's advice, because my wife is a very smart lady, and my wife knows how to handle me, and she knows how to help me deal with the world. So he said that my children and their friends were very helpful in me figuring out how to describe my characters. This story, what it does, for those of you who haven't read it, it follows the lives of 4 friends during one particular summer, and how from that one summer, a painting, which has become the famous painting that the book is talking about, how it was created, and how this painting features these 4 friends. That's the 25-year-ago story. But it also follows an 18-year-old girl, is 18 in the present, named Louisa. And it tells, and Louisa is this 18-year-old who has spent her life in foster care, a very sad and very disturbing and unhappy childhood, but she is quite a character, this 18-year-old girl. And she, in order to tell her story and the story of those 4 friends who were 14, 15 years old, that 25 years earlier, and who are the subject of the painting, because Louisa becomes connected to the painting. She is also an aspiring artist, and this painting that was painted that summer became very famous, and she knows about the painting. So how do you link the two? So he's trying to tell the story of Louisa in the present day and the 4 friends in the painting who are the young teenage kids in that summer during which this picture was created. So the chapters in the book alternate between the present and the past. And the present story belongs to Louisa, while the past story belongs to these 4 teenagers. Joe, and I don't know how to pronounce their names properly, Joar, Joar, Ted, Ali, and the artist, who has different names. So it's a little bit confusing. I don't know if anybody reading it was a little mixed up sometimes as to who is who, or you get because he's referred to as the artist, or he's Kim, or he has the other name that he signs on his painting. Anyway, these four teenagers. So the novels of Frederik Backman, whether they are this one, or whether they are A Man Called Ove, which was his first one, or Anxious People, even Beartown, he has themes that he writes about that you find in all of his books. And those themes include loss, the loss of people, or the loss of youth, or the loss of a place, loss, then the idea of change, how life is nothing if all about change as well as loss. He writes about sadness, he writes about grieving, he writes about, on the positive side, because his books are funny, and yet they're serious as well. So he combines these important, big themes with the power of friendship, and how life can be very complicated and at times very messy, but he also manages to put in there themes of joy and of hope and of second chances. That just because things might seem, you know, that things are not going well in a character's life, or just that when things seem very dismal and very depressing, it doesn't mean that there are no second chances for people in this world and in this life. And this book, my friends, carries on some of these themes through the character of Louisa, because we first meet her, as she said, this 18-year-old girl who spent her her whole life in foster care, abandoned by parents, and she's made herself a wonderful friend. Her friend has the strange name of Fish, and a lot of these kids, their names aren't their real names, they take on other names. But this Louisa has lost her best friend, who she had met in foster care, and Louisa adored her, and she was the one person in the world that she felt that she has somebody and somebody to love. And then the friend dies and is no longer. So Louisa that's when we meet her, when the story opens. And as I said, he carries these themes through the character of Louisa, who is grieving the loss of her best friend. And the only comfort that she seems to have found so far in the book is in the form of a picture postcard with a painting on it. And this was a postcard, she took from one of the many foster homes that she lived in. It was the first thing, Backman writes, that Louisa ever stole, and the first really beautiful thing she ever touched. And it was a postcard of a painting. And so and this is how we meet her. How do we meet? Do you remember, those of you who read it? So there's a funny first scene. As I said, it's typical Backman. The way he writes, just to give you a bit of an example of his style. And he has a very specific style. I don't know how I would describe it. He repeats things a lot. He uses a lot of similes, if you notice that in his writing. This is like this, or she is like that. And they're odd similes. Like they're a bit, I don't know, jarring or off-putting sometimes. Unexpected, maybe that's a better word for it. So he opens, first of all, what does the quote, his epigram at the beginning of the book is by someone called Anton Ego. The world is often unkind to new talent, new creations. The new needs friends. That's his quote. So friendship, by the way, the book's called My Friend, so you know that you're going to be dealing with friendship. This is a very big thing in this book. And in an interview that I listened to with Frederik Backman, the interviewer said to him, "Did you have a group of friends?" And he said, "I was very lucky. I did have a good group of friends we were friends in high school and we were friends as young adults." And he said, I have one very good close friend who I've been friends with for over 30 years, and he has been a very important part of my life. So friendship, he says, to me is one of the things that makes life worth living. He also says, besides that, who does he dedicate this book to? He doesn't dedicate it to his kids or to his wife or to his parents. He writes, to anyone who is young and wants to create something, do it. And he said, that's the message that I wanted to get out in this book, because it's really about art and it's about creating. And one of the four friends that last summer, when they were all together and really still children or young adolescents, that was all about friendship, and it was all also about the one of them who went on to become that very famous artist who suffered, of course, from insecurity, and he didn't think anything he did was worth anything, but he knew he was different and he knew he was odd. So Backman says that that's my message to this book, that anyone who is young and who wants to create something, do it. Don't let anybody talk you out of trying something new. Don't let older people tell you that you're never going to amount to anything, you're never going to be able to produce anything worth anything. Don't do that. If you feel like you want to create something, do it. So that's the author's message before we even begin the story. So the first chapter opens like this, as I said, just to give you an idea of the way Backman writes. Louisa is a teenager, the best kind of human. The evidence for this is very simple. Little children think teenagers are the best humans, and teenagers think teenagers are the best humans. The only people who don't think that teenagers are the best humans are adults, which is obviously because adults are the worst kind of humans. So you know what this is his feel in this book. This is a very kid-oriented or teenager-oriented story. And Backman's always liked kids, and I say, from that second one, okay, the first one was about a man called Ovid, and that was about an older person. But the next one was about that little girl, the 7-year-old, who doesn't fit in, whose grandmother, leaves her these instructions about everybody she has to go say sorry for. So children's worlds have always been a part of Backman's writing. It's one of the last days before Easter. Very soon, Louisa is going to be thrown out of an art auction for vandalizing a valuable painting. Old ladies will shriek and the police will come, and it really wasn't planned. Not to brag, but Louisa did have a perfect plan. It wasn't the plan's fault that she didn't stick to it, because sometimes Louisa is a genius, but sometimes she isn't a genius, and the problem is that the genius and the non-genius share a brain. But the plan, perfect. And then the first scene describes an auction. And he's also pretty caustic in his criticism. He's a you could say social commentary, social critic. He's in the Beartown books. I'm not Swedish and I don't know much about Swedish society, but there was always, those of you who read the stories, there was always the people who lived in that small town where they had the hockey team. It was always the people who were from Stockholm that were the bad guys, because they were the fancy people and they were the pretentious people. So in this case, he's going to describe this scene where people who he finds very pretentious, and what he's writing about, besides friendship and the other themes that he always writes about, is the idea of art. And this is interesting because he said growing up, he never really had any appreciation of art. He said, we didn't go to see art exhibits when I was growing up as a kid. I really didn't have any appreciation for going and standing and looking at a painting and getting a feeling out of it. Or he said, but my wife loves art. And I like to watch my wife when she's looking at paintings. And it's he says, I get great pleasure out of watching how much my wife enjoys art. And over the years, she's taught me a little bit about art. My kids, she drags us when we go on family vacations. She makes the kids and me come along, and we go and we see art exhibits. And he said, now I have a much better appreciation of art than I ever did before I met my wife. But, really, to tell you honestly, watching her delight and joy as she looks at a piece of art, to me, was what got me interested in the idea that, okay, maybe there is something about standing and looking at a painting. So he describes, but you can see already, like this writing style of his. There's a sense of humor, but it's a kind of, I don't think of a better word for it. There's a bit of a causticness to his humor. He writes, to continue. So the plan is perfect, and he says, the auction is one where extremely rich people go to buy ridiculously expensive art, so teenagers aren't welcome there, especially not teenagers with backpacks full of cans of spray paint. Rich adults have seen far too much news about activists who break in and vandalize famous paintings. So for that reason, the entrance is protected by security guards weighing 300 pounds with 0 ounces of humor. They're the sort of guards who have so much muscle that they have muscles that don't even have Latin names, because back when people spoke Latin, idiots as big as these didn't even exist yet. So this is his writing style. To give you an example, I don't know how to put a word to it. As I say, I've been trying to think like what does he write like? It's a very specific Frederik Backman kind of writing style with a kind of humor. I guess maybe you have to be a teenager sometimes to appreciate what he's writing about. But because sometimes to me it sounds a little odd, but that's his style. But that should not have been a problem, because the plan was for Louisa to get in without the guards even noticing she was there. The only problem with the plan was that Louisa was the person who was going to carry it out. But that started well, it has to be said, because the building where the auction is being held is in an old church. We know that because all rich people at the auction keep saying to each other, "Did you know that this is an old church? Did you know that this is an old church?" Because rich people love reminding each other about how incredibly rich they are. So rich that they can buy things from God. Anyway, Louisa breaks in. We found out that she broke in through one of the bathroom windows. Her plan was to do that. Her friend Fish, this is this friend of hers who was her only person in the world who she trusted and who was close to and is now no longer with her. Fish taught her how to break into things, because these two girls were in foster care together, and they had all kinds of life skills that kids who were not in foster care the way they were did not have those kind of life skills. So Louisa got in through the window with a backpack full of cans of spray paint and a perfect plan. When she tumbled onto the floor inside the bathroom, she stopped for a while and painted a very realistic portrait of the guards on the wall. A more shallow artist might have chosen to portray them as bulls, seeing as their necks were so thick it was impossible to tell where their heads began. But Louisa would never do that, because she can see inside people. So she painted the guards as jellyfish, because jellyfish, like guards, have neither backbones nor brains. And then she put on a white dress shirt and snuck into the crowd. And we find out that Louisa is very big and very tall. She's very large. And all through her childhood, she's wished that she would have been smaller, and she does not like her body, we're told, because there's too much of it. She doesn't like her voice because it's too deep, and she does not like her brain because it always tells her to talk when she's nervous. Most of all, she doesn't like her heart because it is always nervous. Stupid, stupid heart. Anyway, we find her, she's in this auction, and Frederik Backman describes this scene, and you can see it almost as a film. I mean, I'm wondering, I don't know if they're going to make a film out of this, if it would work as a movie, but you can see this opening scene where all these people, these art connoisseurs, are standing in this converted church, which is now also an art gallery, and they're looking at paintings, and they're standing with glasses of champagne in their hands, and they're looking and they're discussing about the art. But the way he describes the people, the fun that he pokes at these people, at the pretentiousness of people. So, but why is Louisa there? Because there's this painting there that she wants to see, and this painting is the painting that was painted that summer when those 4 teenagers were 15 years old. It's become very, very valuable, very popular, very valuable, and it's going to be put up for auction. So Louisa's there, and she's trying to see. She wants to see what she can do, and the first scene ends because Louisa gets herself into trouble, and she's chased out by a guard, and then she runs away. And in the back of the church, she meets somebody, and it turns out that she meets the artist, the creator of the painting, who is now very sick. And they meet each other, and there's a whole story. And so basically what happens is the present time of the story is that Louisa and a now 40-year-old, one of this group of teenagers, meet up with each other. This is Ted, and he is going to take the ashes of his friend, the artist, back to the hometown, to their town where they came from, and Louisa joins him, and they travel together, and there's this train journey, and that's the present day of the story, interspersed with the flashbacks from 25 years earlier. So this power of friendship, the idea of change, the idea of hopefulness in the future, they all feature prominently in the story of these four friends. And especially touching is the way that the friends leave each other at the end of the long summer days that they spend together. And so their summer is one of these seemingly endless summers that, if one can remember way back, if one was lucky enough to have had summers like that as a kid, and in this case, they're by the sea, it's Sweden by the sea, and the setting, the town that is the town on the sea. So these kids find their way to the end of a pier every day during their summer vacation. They spend a lot of time swimming in the sea, and they know that this is going to be, that something is going to change, that this is going to be the last summer that they have with each other. But still, when they're living in the present of that 25 years ago, every day when they finish the day that they spend together, there are 3 boys and a girl, and the girl's name is Allie, but that's not really her real name. We don't know her real name. When they leave each other at the end of the long summer day they spend together, they simply say to each other, tomorrow. And tomorrow is a promise. It's a strength that they offer to each other, these kids. And each of the kids comes from, and those of you who read the book, you get a pretty, it's kind of unrelenting misery that these kids grow up with, the homes that they, so you have Louisa, the 18-year-old in present time, who's been in foster care, who's had no family of her own, and an extremely difficult and sad childhood. But the 4 friends who do have parents, they're growing up in this small port town where their fathers mainly work in the harbor, and there's a lot of drinking going on. There seems to be a lot of, beating up of wives and kids when the fathers get drunk. But this is a very bleak portrayal of this town that Backman writes, this seaside hometown. And it probably, if you would go there as a visitor to the town, you would think, oh, this is so picturesque, it's by the sea and how lovely. And the kids, they ride around on their bikes all day, and they hang around the sea, and they jump and they swim in the water, and what could be more blissful as a child. But the home lives are anything but. Their evenings, so their days when these kids spend together in this final summer of their childhood or adolescence, the time together is wonderful, but the evenings, when he writes about, are filled with abuse and with anger and with frustration and with pain. And so in this novel, Backman takes an in-depth look at friendship, and as I said, he said that he was lucky enough to have had good friends and a group of friends, and to know what it means to be a friend. So he's created this group of friends who are for each other what it takes to be able to get them to survive the difficult home lives. They know each other so well, they don't even really have to speak. A look, a gesture, they have their same kind of idiotic adolescent sense of humor. There are a lot of fart jokes that he puts in there. I mean, it's just so silly and it's so slapstick. And yet, there's the pathos of their home lives and what these kids have to deal with when they leave their friends. And that's all in this one story. And they have this bond that is so deep that it seems that what it does is it creates, because one of them is this artist, this young man who has such talent and his friends recognize it, and even though his family, his parents, they think that there's something very wrong with him and it's not encouraged because he's an oddball. School is torture, and the way Backman describes high school, I mean, I know high school is not always a picnic and kids can be extremely cruel, but this high school that he describes, and I remember getting the same feeling in Beartown. Do you remember reading Beartown, like these kids at school and the way they can be so wonderful to each other and then they can be so horrible and so cruel. And in this school, the high school lives that these kids have are also difficult. but there is this cherished work of art that it was created that summer. That is the work of art that's being auctioned there in this church 25 years later. And it's going to affect, not only had it affected the lives of the teenagers, but now it's going to affect the life of Louisa, who's 18 years old, 25 years in the future. And in an interview, it's an interesting interview, the interviewer says to Frederik Backman, you know, this is your coming of age story, one could call it, because 14, 15, that's the kind of time, age of a coming of age story. It's heartfelt, it's funny, it's wise. You have 4 teenagers with fierce loyalty to one another, and they bond over their, well, you know, one of their main bonds is also their unstable families, and then there is the painting done by one of them. And the interviewer says to him, how did you get the idea for this novel? Where did the inspiration for this story come from? And he said, well, I wish I had a better answer for this question, because I rarely know how anything works or where it comes from. Every book is just a long, chaotic process of me sitting alone in a room, arguing loudly with people I have made up. In this case, it started with me writing a first draft that had about 82 parallel storylines and somewhere about 9,000 characters. Everyone I showed it to said, oh, this is interesting in that tone of voice. So my wife finally sat me down and she said, Frederik, this is a very, very dark story because you are in a dark place right now, and that's okay. But you need to find some hope in this story, some redemption, not just for the book, but for you. And he said that at that point, you know, all joking aside from his little 4-minute interview about his procrastination, and he said that he was going through a difficult time, and he thought that he wasn't going to be able to write another book. He thought maybe that was it, he'd had it, and so he said that it was a pretty difficult time for him, but his wife, as he describes her as being very matter-of-fact and practical, in fact, in another interview, he said, you know, there are all these online dating websites now that people use, and these dating websites, they have algorithms where they try and put together, you know, who could be matched with who by help with, I don't know, you can imagine it's going to be all AI now that matching people. He said, no algorithm ever would have put me and my wife together. But we are perfect for each other, and she is exactly what I need. So, and as he says over and over, the more you read about it, so his wife sat him down and said, okay, Frederik, this is really, really too dark. This is not good. You have to do something with this story. It's pretty bleak in between the humor. There's a lot of, like I say, he has it's his trademark mix of a strange kind of humor, which is very adolescent at times. In this case it works because he's writing about adolescence, so adolescent humor works. But he's got this strange, quirky sense of humor mixed with some very dark thoughts. And it's not that his whole life, from what I read about his, I didn't read much about his background, that he comes from anything particularly dark himself. But she says to him, okay, so you have to do something with this story, because it's a good story, but, so he said, I didn't realize it was that obvious, but I had been struggling badly with my confidence as a writer. And then you're thinking, he's been a best-selling writer, internationally acclaimed all over, and he's struggling with his confidence, okay. But he said for about 2 years, I really considered retiring from publishing any more books. And then I showed the draft to 2 other writers, and one of them said, I really love the story about the kids on the pier. So the kids on the pier, those 4 kids on the pier, that's the picture, the cover. I like the cover of this book. So one of the other writers said, I like that story, and I got angry every time you left the kids to go and talk about somebody else. And the other writer I showed the story to said, you know, the story about the kids on that pier made me really think about how I could be a better father. So that was interesting too, because the fathers in the book of those kids were, most of them, not very good. So he says, so I took all of that and I started from the beginning with the kids on the pier. And I thought, if this is the last book that I ever write, who would I want it to be for? And then I wrote that dedication page. To anyone who is young and wants to create something, do it. He said so then the entire story, this book, came out of that dedication. He said, I wanted kids, or anybody really, but particularly kids, that to know that whatever it is that you want to create, for whatever you are afraid of doing, of creating, or pursuing your idea of creating, because you think you're not good enough or smart enough, just give it a try. Try, you fail, you try again, you fail. Fail better, as Samuel Beckett put it. He says, not for success or fame or fortune, but just try it. Just do it for you. And the interviewer says to him, this book is full of both beautiful moments and heartbreaking ones. And it is. You know, you read the story, there's so much heartbreak in the book, as well as so much beauty. And it also moves, as I said, between the two timelines. You have this present day where Louisa is traveling with Ted, who was one of the 4 teenagers that summer, and he's now a successful 40-something-year-old, very neurotic, as Louisa tells him, and it's so funny to read that story through her eyes. So he says that when he wanted to get the voice of Louisa, he listened to the way his kids spoke, and he figured Louisa was a kind of an immature 18-year-old. He didn't really know how 18-year-olds spoke, because his kids are a little younger than that. But he said, I think my 12-year-old daughter was pretty precocious, and I listened to her and to her friends, and I thought, okay, I think I got the voice of Louisa. Okay, so you have Louisa, the 18-year-old, and she's traveling with this 40-year-old Ted, who she looks at as a very, very old man. And it's so funny, because from her perspective as an 18-year-old, to be 40 is old. And of course now, you know, from a certain age, 40 is young. And so it's all a matter of perspective. But he says the challenging part of writing this story, he said, you know, in a novel, for me when I write, there's the technical part and there's an emotional part to a novel. Technically, the biggest challenge is the tempo and the movement and the language. How do I move this story forward? For how long can I keep the reader's attention? And what is every character's distinct voice? Emotionally, the biggest challenge was by far the fact that so much of the people in this book comes from people I grew up with, some of whom I've lost along the way. So I had a lot of days when I was talking to ghosts. You know, she says, so my wife is very used to that. She walks by the room, she hears me talking, she hears me arguing. That's just me being creative. So he does say there that based on people he lost along the, you know, people he knew. And then when he was asked about art, and as I said, he said, I didn't really know a lot about art growing up. But as I say, my wife loves art, and wherever we go, whenever we travel, she takes the kids and me along, and I'm very appreciative that my wife has taught me to appreciate things, and I love how much she loves things. So when I was writing this book, and when I was really stuck, and I was struggling with my confidence, I went with my 12-year-old daughter to a bookshop in Stockholm. He lives in Stockholm, where the characters of Beartown are always making fun of the people from Stockholm. He is one of the people from Stockholm. And he went to this bookshop called the English Bookshop in Stockholm. It was on a Saturday, he says, and it was freezing cold outside, and the place was absolutely packed with teenagers. And I was stunned. A bookshop. And I guess there are books in English. I don't know, it's called the English Bookshop. He said, and I was just, all these kids, these young people were talking about books and sitting there and looking at books, and my daughter started to talk to me about genres of books I didn't even know existed, and then all of a sudden, one young woman asked a staff member, do you have White Nights by Dostoevsky? And I remember thinking, standing there in this small indie bookshop, whoever is saying that young people don't read anymore, I don't think that they know what they're talking about. And so he says, whenever I think about the industry part of the book industry, I remind myself of that Saturday in that bookshop. The young people were interested in books, they were reading books. So a young woman asked for a book by Dostoevsky. He said, I had a new outlook on things. I decided that things were not all that bleak. And he says, so when I wrote this book, he said, because I didn't grow up connected to art, and people say, this is very much a book about art. He said, I never understood it, I really didn't have any formal training in it, it was only through my wife. But I didn't want to come across as being a fraud when I wrote this book, because I was writing a lot about art. So I didn't write from the perspective of the person who painted the painting. I said I tried to feel like I was looking at it from a perspective of a person looking at it from the outside, someone looking at the painting. And he said, so when I came to the end of the book, I felt that my story, if it could be a little bit instructive to people, in just this idea of if you have an idea, if you have something that you want to do, go ahead and do it. If you are feeling discouraged, try not to let yourself get discouraged. Realize, I mean, he's got his roots, the kids, and the kids, how much friendship was. So it's really a tribute, a paean to the idea of friendship and how important friendship is in life, how important friendship is to kids, to adolescents, because particularly to teenagers, their peers are, at the age of 14 and 15, the peer group is the most important group in a kid's life. As one gets older, so things change, and one gets married and has children of one's own, and it's a whole different thing. But this idea of friendship is very much part of this book. This is a tender, to sum it up, a tender and moving portrait about the transcendent power of art and friendship. Because never in her wildest dreams would foster kid, 18-year-old Louisa, ever dream of meeting the famous painter of, and what's the title of this painting? The One of the Sea. That's the title of the painting, which is, we find out that's the painting of this group of young teens on a pier on a hot summer's day. But this, in Frederik Backman's latest book, is exactly what happens. In an unexpected, not completely unbelievable, but in a pretty unexpected and at times almost slapstick, I think that maybe is a word for it, that there's a bit of a slapstick quality to his humor. In a set of circumstances that causes this 18-year-old Louisa to meet the famous painter of the painting that she is so enthralled with, their paths collide right before the artist, who's 39 years old and dying as we meet him, right before he leaves this world. One of his final acts is that he bequeaths this painting to Louisa, who has endured this string of violent foster homes since her mother abandoned her as a child. And if she would sell this painting, because this is sort of the premise of the story, if she would sell this painting, the painting is worth millions of kroner, it would change her life, that she wouldn't have to worry about, she's 18 years old now, so she's outgrown foster care. That would, for her, this would be the greatest gift that could ever happen to her, security and money, but can she do it? And so before she has to make this decision, this very adult decision, she meets up with Ted. Ted is the friend of the artist, one of the artist's close four friends, one of the young teens who was captured in that celebrated painting, on that train journey to take the artist's ashes to his hometown. And she wants to know all about the painting, and the book tells us all about the painting, and there's that train journey. And bear in mind that Frederik Backman hates travel, and so he has the main character, Ted, hate travel. And the two of them, so to Louisa, 18-year-old Louisa, 40-year-old Ted are going together on this train journey. That's the present day. The past was 25 years earlier when Ted is explaining the story of the painting, but if he has to explain the painting, he has to talk about his group of friends, he has to talk about that summer 25 years earlier and what happened to the artist. And one day, and as Ted tells the stories about his friends, how his friend the artist doubted his talents, but he found a champion in one of the other kids who took on every bully to defend him, how the one girl in their group, who they gave the name Allie, how she brought a kind of excitement to their circle that was that little group, like a blinding light, he writes, like a heart attack. And Louisa, our 18-year-old in the present, main character, we could say, she recognizes herself as a kindred soul, and she feels a calling to recognize her own artistic gifts. So what she decides to do with the painting is part of, you could call it a caper, worthy even of the stories that Ted tells her about that summer 25 years early. So while the novel is humorous, slapstick, almost I felt in parts, poignant, it is always life-affirming, even when it's describing the bleakness of the teens' early lives. He has that touch of being able to lighten the bleakness of certain things that he says with that crazy, wacky sense of humor that is very trademark Backman. Art is a fragile magic, just like love, as someone tells Louisa, and that is humanity's only defense against death. So to sum up, this is, you could say, a very tender and moving portrait about the power of art and the power of friendship. Any comments, questions, those of you who read it? Yes?
I'd like to ask, how did the artist meet this 18-year-old girl? I forgot to understand.
So when there's that auction and she gets caught, Louisa, she climbs in the window and then she creates havoc in the gallery, and then she has to run outside, and she goes to the back, and she goes around the back, and she sees, so the artist is there, and they become friends, but then she has to run away because she's being chased, because she's had these cans of paint that she's trying to paint all over the place there at the auction, and that's how they link up. But then she's on the run, and then she meets the artist's friend, that's this Ted, who has the painting, and then the artist passed away, and he has his friend's ashes, and he's going to bring the ashes to the hometown, and that's how they become connected.
No, but how does she get the painting, you said?
Well, he has the painting, and he gives it to her. Yeah.
Ted knew about her.
Yes, because they meet up.
The artist dies.
The artist dies.
To Louisa his will.
Because he's met her, like he leaves the painting to Louisa in his will, and Ted is his friend, and he's been friends, and he has the will, and he knows who his friend has left the painting to, but she doesn't know if she wants this painting, and
Doesn't know what she doesn't have it. She's homeless. Like she doesn't know.
yeah,
what to do with
she's
it.
run away. What does she? Yeah, she has.
So how does it finish? I forgot about it.
Oh,
Well, maybe I won't.
People haven't read
Yeah, maybe I won't say it.
There was a character, Christian, in there that I think had an important role.
Mhm.
His mother.
Mhm.
You didn't mention.
No, sorry, you did. Yeah. So Christian was the janitor in the school,
Yeah.
and also an artist. And so you have these characters who and he painted on walls, right? There's all this idea of white walls and painting on walls, and he was very important because he told the kid, the artist, when he was a young boy, that again, follow your dreams. You're really talented. Go ahead and do it. And then the artist does. He goes off to art school and he starts to study, and he becomes. And never in his wildest dreams would he have expected to have become so successful.
Wasn't Christian's mother also involved?
She was an art teacher.
Art teacher.
She's an art teacher.
Right.
And so she's, yes, and then she appears at the end of the book as well. Yeah, she's the art teacher. So she, even though she's a teacher and she's like official, or I don't know what she's still a sympathetic character. You know, you feel like Backman, she's not pretentious. She tries to teach others to appreciate what is art all about. What's the purpose of art? What's like, why? Why would you look at a painting? What's the point of all of it?
There was one other thing that I found very poignant, which you mentioned how he writes, maybe I shouldn't say it, I don't know.
Yeah.
Where this boy that was very badly abused by his father,
Yeah.
in the end he takes care of him.
Yes.
He doesn't abandon him.
So the ending, right, the things that you expect certain things to turn out certain ways, they don't. That's right, he doesn't abandon and these abusive fathers, and you would think that he was going to kill them, and he didn't, and he's there taking care of, yes, he took care of them.
That was
Yeah,
very
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, so the ending, there's all kinds of things that happen in the ending that tie it up nicely.
Yeah.
Like not in any too pat a way, but in ways that you wouldn't have expected things. Right. Yes, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Anybody else?
That quote at the beginning is from the Pixar film Ratatouille.
Oh yeah?
Yeah,
Oh.
it's about a rat that cooks, and
Anton Ego?
Yeah,
Because I was wondering, that's a strange name. Is
so
that a real?
he's a fake villain in a movie set in France. It's a kids' Pixar film.
Oh, Ratatouille, the movie.
Ah.
Yes.
Ratatouille. Oh,
And that's the
lovely.
final line of the movie, because he eats ratatouille at
Oh.
the end of the film, and he's amazed that something that is so humble can bring him back to his childhood and make him feel. He's like a food critic,
Oh.
and he makes this statement in his review of the restaurant, saying the new needs friends, because he initially tears down the restaurant, and then
Oh.
he recognizes that like a young person, or in this case a rat,
Yeah.
can be a chef, because any creative can come from anywhere.
Oh, thank you. That's really very helpful, because, you know, I wasn't looking, thinking Anton Ego, that's probably not a real name, you know, alter ego, this is Anton Ego, it's funny.
It's a fake
but-
name,
Did you know, how did you?
because I've seen the movie.
Oh, okay, I didn't see. Well, yes, that's a nice point to know. Thank you.
But I find it interesting that he writes a book that's targeted, like he says, to inspire children. It's not a book for children or teenagers,
No,
right? Like it's an adult book.
it's an adult
with
book,
an intro
yeah.
from a Pixar film, and all
Yeah.
the main characters are, like, even the adults are teenager adults, which is why they're good.
Right.
Like Christian is sort of a teenagery adult,
Yes,
graffiti,
yes,
and the mother
yeah.
is sort of a teenagery adult because she's supportive, and like all the other adults.
Because the other adults are the ones who are either the pretentious people in the beginning scene, or the ones who are so cruel and especially the fathers. You know, like I wonder if that's a certain segment of Swedish. I don't know, workers but that really is a very interesting comment, because it's not a children's book. You're right, and Ted, who's traveling with Louisa, he's 40 years old, but he's so, I don't know, insecure, and that he doesn't seem to be an adult either. I mean, he is an adult, and he's 40 years old, and but he's not a bad guy.
Yeah, and he
Yeah.
still finds her kind of annoying. Like, you know, Bachman says the teenagers are great, but Ted finds Louisa's kind of annoying.
Yes, I mean, she is kind of annoying. She's like larger, and literally, as he describes her, larger than life.
finds him annoying.
Yes.
And she finds him annoying, you know, and she does these crazy things, and there's that whole scene where they get off the train, and then and then these two guys attack them, and then they're running away from them, and then this lady taxi driver takes it.
She runs away, and then he follows her and gets beat up because of her, basically.
Yeah, and then that taxi driver picks them up, and then they have to get back onto the train, and then I don't know, it was a whole, like, I just really wonder if this would make a movie. I don't know, I guess,
I think it would be a good movie.
I think it could be well done.
Yeah.
And all recall the way they were carrying this.
Painting,
Well,
the
it's
painting
rolled
in
up.
the ashes.
Is it?
It's rolled up.
It's rolled up.
Rolled up,
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like just the,
yeah. And the ashes. And then, yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's quite the rollicking tale, peopled with these interesting characters. I guess a look at life through he really has a very particular lens that he looks at life through. Yeah.
I like how he gives so much dignity and humanity to people who like, society otherwise might just look down on and not even think about.
Yeah. You mean,
The
do you
region,
mean also
the,
like,
the poor family, the other side of the tracks kind of.
yeah.
That's-
Or the fact that the four friends are so close and support each other. You know, you couldn't have anybody closer than their relationship because one recognizes the talent of the other one.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think that he could draw or do anything.
Yeah,
He kept
yeah.
pushing him, go for it.
Yeah.
So I found that was really amazing too.
And remember I don't know, do you remember in Beartown? I think it was, because I read 2 out of the 3 of the Beartown. There was this mother whose son wants to play, so the hockey team wants to play hockey, and she's an immigrant from, it's always unnamed countries, but I guess he writes about it, and I'm wondering if this is also, his wife has I think, Iranian name, but definitely not Swedish. And there was that mother, she was a cleaner in the hockey rink, and she had to get up very early in the morning to clean the hockey rink. Do you remember that? I don't know, it just stuck with me. And he felt so sorry. It was a mother and son, and they had fled some war-torn country, maybe, I don't know, Afghanistan or Somalia or whichever country they came from. And she was so poor, and he was too. And he wanted skates, and he wanted to become part of the hockey team and to be accepted. And then there were the kids whose father drove them to practice in their Volvos. So you get a good picture of the strata of Swedish society from his books. Anxious People was also really a combination of funny and, that was, did you read it? Do you remember like that? Anxious People? In an apartment, they're showing in an apartment, but it's also becomes this.
It's a mystery.
A mystery, yeah, it was a mystery, yeah. But there was all kinds of other, yeah, the people who come to look. And then they are held hostage. It's like a hostage situation. It's another interesting one if you want to try something different.
I just took it out.
Oh, good. Okay.
It's the closest that Backman does to a mystery. It's still a Backman. Like
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's still a box.
very emotionally poignant.
So is that how would you describe it? How would you sum up his
I think he's
style?
It feels sarcastic or like sardonic or
Sardonic.
rebellious almost. Like Yoar, the character of Yoar.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought he was so sympathetic that I was sure he would be murdered or die or commit suicide because you like him so much. So I was like, this character has death lines. He's going to die.
No, I thought he was going to kill his father.
Yeah. Like something
Yes,
like
I
that.
mean,
thought
we all thought he was
horrible
gonna
would
kill
happen
his
to
father.
him Because
Yeah.
he's so lovely.
I was hoping he'd kill his father.
Something like
Well,
that.
we
But
all
then, so you keep thinking, there's no way this is going to turn out okay. And I thought Ali was a boy until halfway through the book.
I think we were also
they
supposed to be, and then I also, because I kept looking at the cover.
There are no
So-
girls in there.
Well, there are no girl, right?
And was Ali meant to be read as trans? Or I don't know.
I don't think so. Because I don't know, he just says at one point that the girls were all jealous of her because the boys all looked at her. But then she goes off and very sadly, she becomes she goes surfing and then she just disappears. And also unhappy because her father moved them around every time he owed too much money in one town. He picked up his family and moved them to another. So between the drinking and the owing money but this constant drinking, I don't know, is it a Swedish thing? Yes?
Yes.
Maybe a small town. In Sweden?
They do. They drink on the weekends, they drink themselves blind. Teenagers, young people. If there's
that's what comes out in here, yes. As he says, what did he say? Oh, in that funny, look up, Google Frederik Backman in that 4-minute interview on writer's block and procrastination, because I can't re-say it because he's really funny, he's so witty, but he says something about, what is it, like, something in America, because he's in the States giving this talk, and then he said, but if it was Swedish, then it would be less expensive and you'd have to put it together yourself. But I forget how it was. It was it was an IKEA reference, but it was nothing to do with furniture, but it was just so funny. So he's got this self-deprecating wit about him, and yeah, this combination of slapstick and poignant and unexpected, I think, like, somehow.
There's just a lot of, I couldn't describe the actual.
I don't know. I keep trying.
It's really unique to him. I don't think there are a lot of authors like that.
And one last thing was that he said, so what I really like to do is tell stories. I'm not, so I guess it's not so much as he's a stylist, like let's say, I don't know, other writers will work on crafting a sentence. I'm not sure he works at his sentences, but he said, for me, it's I want to tell a story. I'm a storyteller, because that, to me, is the most important thing, to tell stories.
Yeah, I think Anne Tyler, she's more selective with her words.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every sentence, every is crafted, every word is chosen. His writing doesn't seem that.
It's all feelings with Backman, and I feel like it's just emotions. It's just like more and more emotion.
That's true. Yes. It's all like, I wonder what he's like to live with. I don't know. He's like,
I found it very sad.
Yeah.
It is.
Anguished.
Yes, that's a good word. Like, it's anguish. Like, it's disturbing. It's bothering.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah. I found it disturbing also. I think it's hard not to find it disturbing.
But a man called Otto, is it the English word Otto?
I don't think so. I think
No,
it's just a
it's
Swedish.
A man called Otto. I don't know if it's the same.
I think wait, you're saying it's a different movie?
I thought it was a different book altogether.
There's a book called A Man Called Otto?
I'm Googling it now.
Google it, because I think...
I saw a movie that
Yeah.
I loved. So when you said a man called something, I thought maybe
Yeah.
translation.
Oh wait, so Tom Hanks is in a movie called A Man Called Otto from 2022. It's a comedy drama with Mark Forster. And it is a remake, of the 2015 Swedish film, A Man Called Ove.
Okay, so I
based
saw
on
the Swedish Man Called Ove, the original.
Okay, so that.
And I never saw the Tom Hanks one.
I'm assuming the Tom Hanks one's a little more broad, like warm and sort of like...
Yeah.
Because the original was not at all warm, and it was very Swedish.
I love the story.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah.
loves like a
Was it
curmudgeon
written?
loving their cat. I feel like it's a pretty good sell.
Yeah.
So was it written by him?
So Backman wrote the book.
Backman
and then
wrote
they
the
made
book.
a movie, and then they made another movie.
Another movie. It was a remake of the first movie. And they changed the name from Ove to Otto.
Yeah.
And Tom Hanks. Yeah.
So that's.
All right.
All right, thank you.